Just to get us started, I wanted to let you know that we are video recording the event, that we plan to put that on our website so that, so any of your questions, if you wouldn't mind, if you want to be recorded on who's speaking, you could state your name and your school, or you could not, it's up to you, but it is all going to be recorded. We're really looking forward to having a candid dialogue today around ADT and all of the sort of rumors that have come up about it. Some of them actually, substantiating that they are true, and some of them may be finding out that that's not exactly what is planned. I just wanted to recognize that Jen Comey from the DME is in the audience, as is Mary and Naomi from DCPS. Because DCPS is also part of the initiative to have automatic data transfer. So this is actually a full LEA, full city meeting. And I think we'll start with Jeff Noel, as you all know from OSSI, who has been leading this initiative from OSSI and has been working with many of you already to set up ADT at your schools, but some of you are not yet involved in the process. Scott, did you want to introduce yourself?
I think you have it well in here.
All right. Do you want to?
Sure.
Is there handouts out there?
Yeah.
And if you haven't picked up a handout.
They're at the thing. Oh, I handed.
Do you have it?
Yeah. Yeah, they're back at the
Yeah.
second table.
So out there is frequently asked questions that has come as a result of conversations between Focus, PCSB, and my folks in terms of the ADT in general, where we've tried to go through in detail some of the concerns that we've heard from folks and address them as accurately, clearly, and transparently as we could. Before I get into much depth, I really do want to say thank you to both Focus and PCSB. I think they have made a tremendous effort to help support us in doing things that are thoughtful in terms of improving data collection infrastructure within the charter sector when that actually happens, and pushing us to at the state level to stay within our boundaries and to be appropriate in our use and collection of data. I think it's really critical, not just that they play that role, but that we acknowledge and respect that they've been playing that role. And so I want to start off by saying that.
Yeah. Can you either speak up or use the microphone? Which would you rather do?
I'm probably better with a microphone.
Okay.
I'm a little bit sick at the moment. I'm sorry.
Or video recording?
You might have to speak up.
All right, I can do that.
Check. There you go.
All right. Yeah, that works. So before we get into questions and answers, and I think the core part of this from my perspective is to ensure that, again, we're accountable to you and answer any questions and clarify any things that are our concerns. I just want to go back a little bit to the purpose of the ADT project in general. When I started at OSSI a little bit over 2 years ago, one of the first things that we did is we started reaching out to LEAs to find out what were core concerns. And the biggest thing that we heard at the time was that there was a huge burden associated with interacting with OSSI, particularly as a charter school in terms of duplication of collections that were coming from both PCSB and OSSI, or sometimes from 2 or 3 different offices within OSSI. And also that the process of getting data into a format that OSSI would accept, and the back and forth with spreadsheets or QuickBase or other sorts of things was a big distraction from the effort of actually running a successful school. And so Hosanna, as state superintendent at the time, clearly laid out a charge to me to, do whatever is needed to find a way to reduce the burden associated with data protection. And we started at that point a process of talking to other states and seeing how do they do things and how do they do things to make them more efficiently. And I think we found a number of interesting things in that process in terms of differences between us and other states. The daily collection of enrollment and demographic information that we do here is actually in many ways an envy of other states that haven't been able to replicate it, but also seems to lawsuits over special education services, that this seems to be a common sort of outcome or result of those things happening. The second thing is that many other states had actually advanced much further than us in terms of developing systems to manage the data collection process, and had gotten much further in terms of having really clarity in advance of what the expectations would be for what data would be collected over the course of the year. And so we've tried to address, as a part of that, two separate things. One is, how do we make the actual process of collecting information from LEAs more efficient? Make it so that it can be done once to OSSI, and ideally done once in a way that satisfies requirements that both OSSI and PCSB have in the case of a charter school, and done in a way that requires less effort on the part of both school-based staff and staff at authorizing and state-based organizations, so that everyone can focus more on teaching and learning and less on data transportation sort of work. The second project, which is not as much the focus of today, but I think we're going to start having a lot more conversations about shortly, is what is the appropriate information for the state to collect, and with what sets of uses. And I want to both acknowledge that that is a clear need and a discussion that we need to have as a state as a whole, and say that that is not the purpose of the ADT project. The purpose of the ADT is to streamline the data collection that happens, whatever that becomes, so that it's efficient and it's automated. Taking the technical model that's happening, that Rhode Island successfully deployed with DCPS and with traditional and public charter schools in their state, and implementing that statewide. And so it has been sort of our aspiration and our hope that we can use this ADT project to automate things, to make the process of data collection more burdensome, less burdensome, reduce the overall number of errors, and make it more efficient so that we can have better infrastructure. And again, I think the other one is a really important conversation too, and I want to acknowledge that it's a conversation we need to have. It's just in the way that we're thinking about things, it's not part of the ADT. ADT is a way to transport data, and that data could be very narrow or very broad, and could have restrictions on it, how it's used, or not have restrictions on its use. And so in that sense, there's the technical piece of how do we physically transport the data, and then there's the policy piece about what data gets collected and how it's used. All right. So that's why we're trying to do this ADT project. At this point, our ADT technical implementation team has reached out and started conversations with 39 LEAs. I think we have 13 LEAs where we're actually in receipt of data coming from the ADT on a daily basis for demographic and enrollment information as of today. We had 2 additional ones that came on yesterday. We have run into some technical obstacles on the way. We had some compatibility issues with School Force that we believe are now fully resolved. We've had some problems with firewalls in a couple places that we also think are resolved. But we feel like we're having strong progress on the technical project. We're also hearing continued discomfort. So I guess that leads us to what sort of questions and concerns do folks have, and how can we do a better job of doing whatever effort to reduce the burden and automate the process of data collection and make it more efficient.
I can speak up. Melvin Freeman, I work at the next step charter school. So our plan was to add the flat file, the Excel files, ADT, and even that has been very problematic. So we went from saying we can have an Excel file to you need to have a CSV to you can have Windows 8. Now you can have Windows 8. And it's been like over a month that we've been going back and forth, and I thought the Excel just upload was supposed to be the easy part. And in setting it up, it would take, I think it's just like an implementation issue. Like it would take an hour or 2 out of our day to log me in Pro, so now we can't use our computer. We're just clicking around, figuring things out. And I just wish it was like better thought out on the implementation side before we brought like these schedule meetings, and it's been very, very burdensome on our registrar side. That's in general.
So I want to start off by saying that I apologize for that. We actually spoke about that this morning. We're setting up a lab to replicate that environment, and we're going to demonstrate the flat file with Excel under Windows 8 working in that lab before we roll back out to go. So we have a group of technical folks, including a couple of .NET experts working on that.
Jeff, first of all, we know and recognize this is a huge undertaking, so thank you. I think some of the trepidation from the charter schools is that this is actually adding another system next year, because we will still have to upload all our data to Proactive. So it's not actually taking away anything, right? So, because attendance, ISS, discipline still has to go to Proactive, we still have to do the data feeds to Proactive. Now this is a separate system that we're feeding into, and so I think that's some of the trepidation, and I think I'd encourage you to continue talking with PCSB, because we're still doing double data entry with ADT and Proactive. So I think that's where there's a lot of hesitation and confusion.
Fair enough. I don't know if you guys want to speak to this, but I know what our aspiration has been in our conversations is to make it so each piece of data is entered only one time, and that if it gets entered at through a system that goes to OSSI, that it gets transferred to PCSB and vice versa, so that while managing a transition is difficult, that we can ensure that at least we avoid duplicative entry of the same data, even if we cannot avoid duplicative systems while we're managing a transition.
So why not have ADT communicate directly with Proactive?
So do you guys want to?
Yeah, so we're working on that now. We've been talking with Jeff's team extensively about it, and we're quite confident that we can make it work from ADT to Proactive. It's a timing issue at this point. Jeff's team has been working really hard with LEAs to get it set up from LEA to SLED, and we need to put some resources into the SLED to Proactive feed. We've been working also on setting a drop dead date of when is it that we say to LEAs, great, the feed from SLED to Proactive is fully operational. You will not have to enter enrollment and demographic data in Proactive next year. You will still have to do attendance and discipline, but the enrollment and demographics will just happen once.
So then SLED will feed it into Proactive
Yes.
for next year.
That is our technical and legal goal.
So there are a couple pieces that I just want to add to Michaela's answer. We've been waiting, and we are candid, we've been waiting on an MOA or MOU with OSSI to ensure that we get the data back, so that our goal is the burden, right? We want to lessen the burden on you. We recognize that Proactive was never intended to be what it is today, because originally, way back in 2006, when SLED, the original, Brian Richardson, for those that remember, and back with Deborah Gitz, when we were originally talking about SLED, it was supposed to be this repository of one system, and all schools, including DCPS, were going to put in data, and it's just been millions of dollars, and we are where we are today. PCSB entered into that realm by creating Proactive on the side, so that they could get the data that they needed, and it actually worked much faster. It's not a system that, as you all know, can do very well with just automatic transfers. So the SIF works for those of you that have PowerSchool and have somebody who can keep up with all the changes in PowerSchool that break the SIF. Attendance and discipline data were never able to get to work, although Proactive had promised originally that all of these data would be automatic. We support the state in creating automatic data. We think there's way too many FTEs being spent on putting data into systems where those FTEs should be spent on educating kids. So in that line, ADT promises to be a solution to this very big problem among all of our LEAs. However, we need to know that we'll get the data in the right, and it's not going to break, that we're going to get the data on a daily basis back to us, right? And so that we can do our job as the authorizer. So that's one piece that's been worked on. It started last summer, and we're still working on it. And then there's the uncomfortable piece around attendance and discipline. And we're, PCSB is sort of agnostic in this area. We want the data to be in our systems, as has been for the last 3 years. Whether schools want to give it directly to us or whether they want to use ADT is something that we need to look at. And at this point, we're trying to be as open as possible in terms of it's your decision on how to make that choice. But right now, we're looking at enrollment